Well, it was wonderful. We talked about a lot of things over the last couple days. Now we're talking with Galaxy Digital. But I think it's time we really honed in on what's really going to move the needle, which is Web3 UX. How are we going to get more people on the chain effectively? To that end, we've grabbed some real pros here again. We've got Stephen McPherson, who's the BD rep for Sonic Labs, Pat Kearney from Relay, who's the head of growth. Ollie Raheman makes his return. He's the founder of Magpie Protocol. And Ranko Gajanovic is growth from RZLT. So they're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to figure out how to get UX looking sharp. So please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you.
What's up, brother? Yes, sir. See you.
How's it going, everybody? Almost done. Ready for the end of the events here. Thanks for attending. UX design itself is not one of my fortes, but as part of my job and personal life, I play with a lot of DeFi and infrastructure apps, and it's definitely as crucial of a part of any project business-wise than even back-end and tech. So it's something you definitely can't ignore. If you guys don't mind, let's do some intros. Joy?
Sure. Patrick Kearney, leading growth at Relay Protocol. Fast cross-chain swaps, same-chain swaps, bridging across 80 different blockchains, based out of New York.
Mali, founder of Magpie Protocol, cross-chain liquidity aggregator, currently live on 19 chains, and based out of Dubai.
My name is Ranko. I'm doing growth at RZLT, here to represent Biconomy, which is enabler for the cross-chain infrastructure and coordination of the transactions.
Right on. All right, so what would you guys say are the biggest pain points for users that face users today in Web3, like from a UX perspective?
Well, I suppose it depends on the kind of users. I think people who are into DeFi, like the multi-chain landscape can often get too daunting. If you're trying to move to a new chain, or you're just trying to move some assets from one chain to the other, you might not have gas. So gas can be troublesome. For new users, just the whole multi-chain DeFi landscape can be rather difficult to navigate. It's like, which bridge do you choose to move? Which DEX do I choose to swap? Do I have sufficient gas tokens or something? And I think that covers several different areas of difficulties, but yeah, just the overall experience in navigating even on a single chain, and then that gets more and more increasingly difficult when you expand that to more chains.
Yeah, not having gas tokens is a little bit of a pain. We're doing some gas subsidy work so that apps will be able to provide some of that so that their users don't even have to really worry about that in the beginning. That'll be really nice, I think, for everybody. So like with new tech innovations as far as like EIP 7702 and account abstraction and all these things, how do you think that they're going to impact user experience of your apps and of apps in general?
I mean, the less confirmations that we all have to make in our wallets, the better.
Yeah.
Right? I think even going back to the point you guys just made around gas, it's like similar to, I think, Jumper has a nice gas top-up feature enabling users who might be stranded because they don't have the native gas token in their wallet, but they have some other asset enabling them to top up super quickly, even if it's just 0.3, 0.5, whatever it is that you might need. And I think you know this just as well. It's also a bit of a binary choice, giving them the opportunity to get where they need to go quickly, instantly, at a low cost is really kind of that next step forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things, speaking of what you just said, that we did was to make sure that all the bridges that we've been working with actually airdrop you. Well, our bridge does it too. Airdrop you like a tiny amount of S so that at least you're not stuck with, oh, I moved my USDC over and now I can't do anything with it. So it'll be nice when that kind of thing is no longer necessary.
Truly. I feel like that's every user's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably happened to all of us in the beginning, right? So not fun. Anybody else with that one? Or?
Yeah, I mean, smart contract wallets is something I'm super excited about, just as part of aggregation, and for us, as the next step, aggregation serves as like a key piece for what we call chain abstraction. smart contract wallets also play an important role there. And yeah, so I'm personally quite excited. I think we're seeing that with the apps already, that offer much better experience, much more um, like unified. So yeah, I'm excited about how that further gets implemented.
Yeah, I mean, at Biconomy, we obviously have Nexus accounts, which are super smart accounts that dApps can integrate on the app level. And they can, obviously, with the Fusion accounts that we have the option where user can control the Nexus account or the smart account when interacting with the dApp without even knowing that it's a smart account behind all of that, right? So we are kind of doing that account abstraction through the smart account that apps can actually integrate today, right? So it's completely enabled. I think we're all kind of bullish about the 7702, and it's going to enable a lot of features. Probably there is a lot of nuances now in the space, like how different teams are going to work around it and how they're going to implement it on their own protocol level, like obviously different wallets and so on. So it's going to iron out as we move forward, right? But yeah.
Right on. So cross-chain apps are growing, as you know, there's so many chains that you kind of need them at this point. But they're still confusing to users, especially new users. In what ways have you guys tried to simplify interactions across chains without losing composability?
I think probably a very good example of this is OpenC2 rolled out probably like 2 months ago now, and they enable you to cross-chain mint, cross-chain purchase using balances on different chains, which is powered by Relay in the background. And it's kind of the next step, right? Enabling that UX so the user doesn't have to worry about it. You know, they're able to do that interaction and kind of get where they need to go very quickly and easily. And you know, similar to, as you just said, like they don't need to know. They just want to interact and participate. And the easier that is, the less friction there is for that user, the more people we can welcome into this space.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can quickly jump back to the first question. And here, because users have so many steps when being onboarded, and because they have to choose between the gases, chains, and all of that, which you actually mentioned, I think this is actually the case where the centralized exchanges and CeFi is capturing so much users at the first place. Because at centralized exchange, they don't need to think about that, right? And as long as we can enable such experience and such seamless interaction without knowing all of those intricacies that lie behind the chain interaction, cross-chain swaps, and so on, that way we'll be able to actually create streamlined user experience for them. But at this point, it's also going to be important for the developer experience to enable them to create such flows for the users, right? So just my 2 cents on it.
Right on, yeah. If we get to that point where things are fully chain abstracted, so that users don't even know what chains they are using, what pieces do you think still need to be built for that to become a reality beyond just account abstraction?
I think the most challenging thing is the interface of what it's supposed to look like. Because you can unify assets, so USDC could mean USDC regardless of what chain it's on. ETH could mean ETH if it's on Arbitrum, or it could be on ETH. But the challenging thing, I think, is because you have the pieces, you've got something like Relay that will get you to where you need in a matter of a few seconds. Right? You've got aggregators like us that will do the routing from bridges or from DEXs to get you the best pricing. But then how do you display that in a way, like, because it's just like, it's a new way to represent how to engage with this multi-chain DeFi. How much information do you display? How much do you limit? How much control do you give it? From a consumer app perspective, us as doing both, building a consumer app, building the infra, allow builders to build this. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of interfaces and designs we come up with that gets the most, that have a perfect blend of customizability. You've got all the information you need, but there's not too much either. So curious to see how that plays out. So design, I would say.
Right on. If you were to start making an app today and focus on UX from the beginning, do you have any recommendations for tools or primitives that a developer could use to start? Or
Who wants to shill first?
yeah,
Are we now to the full shill? No. So from Biconomy side, we have obviously the abstract.js, which allows you at the front-end level to actually design the path or write the path in natural language. and then enable for the user to just execute it via single signature. I mean, here I'm probably missing the explanation about the super transaction and modular execution environment, so may as well just jump to that, because we have currently the monolithic design of the transactions, and this is potentially one of the problems. So the user is going to sign the transaction, transaction is going to go to the RPC, it's going to communicate to the node, settle on the chain, right? And it's just one path. Meanwhile, the super transaction that Bright team at Biconomy has been designing is actually a complex data object. So it consists of the Merkle tree that consists of the intents, user ops, off-chain actions, and so on. And basically, we enable one signature execution that's going to send the super transaction to the modular execution environment and allow it to settle on the destination chains. So this is actually going to enable different actions on different chains to be executed in one single click, right? So whether you want to swap on one exchange and then, for example, I don't know, let's take Shadow. So you're going to swap USDC for Sonic on Shadow, then you're going to go to the silo and you're going to land Shadow, borrow USDC back. Then you want to go to RA7 Vault on Morpho because it has good yield. You can do all of that in just one single click. Yeah. The only thing at the moment is that developer needs to actually design those paths. So it's going to be on the UX perspective, and we are going to enable them. And this is where the abstract.js comes in, right? Additional thing probably that I can mention here is that the team is also working on streamlining that from the developer experience, where they're just going to say what they actually want to happen. And then we are going to, through the algorithms and automations, work on finding the best path, which we are obviously going to use third parties like bridges, solvers, so on.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the interop cross-chain piece is obviously super necessary from an end user experience perspective. I think enabling seamless wallet connectivity or even trying to think about how you abstract that in the future. There's a good tweet from Xerox Designer that for whatever reason he reposted this morning from 2 years ago talking about what if we actually just didn't even have that experience. It was just connect, no wallet, which is obviously probably difficult for all of us to kind of think through since we're so familiar with that experience. But you have an app like One Balance, which just shows that one total balance at the very, very top. So yeah, I think we're in an interesting time and place, both obviously macro market conditions, but then with the Pectra upgrade, 7702 and stuff like that. And I think the next 3 to 6 months are going to be pretty wild.
Anything?
As far as builders are concerned, like for building cross-chain or same-chain dApps, having a good user experience, you could use Bridge like Relay, you can integrate them directly, or you could use an aggregator like Magpie. I mean, if you use Relay, you might probably end up routing a transaction through Magpie. But if you use Magpie, you get access to, lesser chains than Relay. But yeah, you get access to bridges like Relay. So there's definitely interesting tech stacks that builders can use to create the optimal UX for their use case.
Right on. More so for you too. What kind of educational elements have you baked into your UX to be able to help newer users understand what exactly they're interacting with?
When a new user comes to the web page, they have a quick tour. This is like a very simple, I guess a Web2-esque way to highlight, what the swap is. Even though the interface is pretty simple, but then again, we come from a bias. We're used to like a swap page, and it's like, yeah, you connect wallets and you enter the amount, you select the chain, and you swap. But that can, in fact, as I learned along the way, that can be difficult for people to grasp. So we just have like a quick tour for the first time. We obviously don't show it every time because it used to get annoying for me. So that's just like the really basic thing off the top of my head that we have in the interface.
I usually skip those, but it's good that, it's good that they exist.
Yeah.
I think one piece, right, is like making it super, super clear. And I honestly think this is something we could do a lot better in our own UI on the front end, is highlighting what the native gas token is so that a user is aware of that, before you ape into a new chain. I think the other piece is related to some changes we made recently, which is really starting to showcase, the most active or popular routes that an individual user chooses, right? And starting to learn that habitual kind of usage from their perspective, so they kind of have a more modular, customized experience for their end use case.
Another one. Oh, go ahead.
Just would like to add, but less from the technical perspective. I mean, we are obviously all here degens, and we've been in space for quite some time, and we're used to much worse branches than the things are right now, like, and much more interactions. But when it comes to like streamlining the flow for the new users, it wouldn't be bad, like, for example, to go and do the interviews with the random users who are first time interacting with your dApp, right? So that way you can see from different perspective how actually your dApp is complex for them, right? So maybe that can inspire the builders and actually the UX designers on how to streamline all of those processes. This is probably more from the of marketing or UX side, right, than from the technical side. But I think those user interviews and then looking outside of the bubble and the loop that we may end up, even though we don't want to be there, but it's like just years of using the products and getting used to them. So this could be an interesting way to circumvent this and get the ideas from fresh minds who are not in the same position that we are.
I honestly think that's a great point, right? You almost want to take, first of all, like, feedback is a gift, right? You can't get better input, and sometimes I wonder if we also aren't seeking out the feedback that we want or need outside of our own space, right? Like going and picking up somebody on the street and being like, would you know how to kind of get started or interact with this kind of immediately? And if we want to, everybody's tagline is for the next billion users. It's like, well, then we need to be speaking with these individuals and getting a sense of really where they're getting caught up and starting to build that layer of trust.
Right on. Yeah. What, if any, UX strategies have you guys employed to convert a one-time user into a regular user of your platform?
Well, this may not be related to conversion, but we have gasless transactions for users. If they're trying to explore a new chain, or they just don't have gas, they can just do a gasless transaction. We do have this thing we call the boost section in our web app, where we highlight, specifically in Sonic, we've actually only made this live on Sonic, so there's different silo vols or Euler or Euler, depending on what you like.
It's Euler. I asked.
I think it's Euler too, but...
No, I asked them as soon as I saw them. I was like, okay, you got to tell me. Euler, Euler, it's Euler.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, Euler lending pools. So we kind of highlight them in the boost section. This kind of spotlights different protocols, different opportunities that might exist in a chain. And I think that has led to a lot of people coming back to our interface, because in large part our volume has been through integrations. But it's starting to shift with this boost page, where you can see different opportunities. We're incentivizing them with our own point system that we call eggs. So yeah, that's been one of the things that's been interesting, and we'll keep building on that. That kind of ties into our tokenomics as well.
I think it's probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago now, we rolled out a partnership for now with MoonPay, basically allowing any user to come in and on-ramp into a long-tail asset like Sonic, very, very quickly and easily. I think we can improve that experience much, much more. But for these kind of new exploratory crypto-curious users, it's super important for them to be able to get to that endpoint where they, I think we joke internally, it's time to fun. How quickly can you get them to that time to fun? And by enabling them to go directly from fiat, Revolut, Venmo, stuff like that, you're starting to actually connect that UX and hopefully creating, a habitual kind of returning user.
Right. How do you measure the success of your onboarding UX in terms of user retention? Is that something that you guys track internally, or how do you handle that?
I'd say it'd be a problem if we did not track that. It really comes down to, we don't really collect cookies, right? So we're analyzing wallet addresses and, allowing those users to remain anonymous. But you're looking at, these cohort segments over time and making sure that you're seeing these healthy retention rates over a 1, 2, 4, 6 week period. And I think that's the other beauty about like A/B testing and starting to see, this minor improvement really made a significant difference in that second and third week of retention. So super, super important, I think, to be dialed in on that metric.
Yeah, of course.
We keep an eye eye out on two things: weekly, daily active users, and how many are continuously coming back and trading. So that's always a good metric to see. And sometimes this is because crypto is sort of that way. It's, people don't always trade, and sometimes they trade en masse. So we keep an eye out on that. And the other thing is specifically on our front end is that we keep a track of any kind of failed transactions for whatever reason. It could be there was out of gas, there's not enough gas in the user's account, or it could be the price was not appropriate. There's a lot of reasons why a transaction may not initiate or may not execute. So we keep a track on that to ensure that anybody who uses the product, even on the consumer app, they have a solid experience. So yeah, we keep an eye out on user behavior to that extent, just interaction with our contracts and front end and our APIs.
Nice. How do you guys balance aesthetic design versus performance on your front ends? Do you lean towards performance at all costs, or do you lean a little bit more towards let's make it nice and pretty for the users?
I mean, we've been extremely performance-oriented for the most part, again, because we want to make sure that our infra and our APIs are on point, both in pricing and reliability for our integrators. But recently, that's been shifting a bit more. I do think we have a pretty good user experience. At least that's what people tell me. And we continue to improve that. So now we're hyper-focusing on that. Especially with Sonic, we realized that the speed of the finality is just so quick that we had to make some modifications because the chain would confirm the transaction sooner than we would display it in our interface. And so yeah, we just optimize for that so that you can get that feel that you click and it's done. So we're trying to incorporate these things so that the overall flow, because chains can be complicated, RPCs can be annoying, but you can do a lot of stuff in your front end and your overall user experience so that it's a pleasant and seamless experience for the user.
Yeah, we've been very, very lucky to work with incredible partners like Fly.trade, and also Sonic, where those partnerships enabled that performance element. And certainly we've had to do some work on our end, but working with incredible teams like yourself have allowed us to focus on the kind of end UX and making sure that's fine-tuned for the end user to make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah. Do you guys have any personal UX design, trends that you dislike in this space?
I don't want to name names.
Oh, you don't have to name any names. You could just describe it. I'm definitely not asking you to name any names.
I'm trying. I don't know how to do that without Fox naming names.
I mean, we could just move on.
I suppose we can.
Yeah.
No, maybe I can add here because, for example, one of the biggest use cases that we're going to have that we're working right now is going to be with the jumper exchange. So it's going to significantly streamline the process.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. It's going to significantly streamline the user flow on the exchange, and yeah, I think it's going to have great impact because there's a lot of transactions happening right there. Yeah.
Anything, Pat?
I mean, I will speak about who I'm speaking about without speaking about them by saying there are a number of newer wallets. Rabby is a very good example. Phantom has done a great job to keep themselves relevant and keep kind of improving that in experience. And the unnamed, side of the wallet piece, I think, is probably one of the more frustrating. The most established, most used one out there that we all know. I think it's probably just consistently some of the worst UX I've ever seen. Juxtapose that, I think the on-ramping piece, it's sad to say this, but Wire was one of my favorites. I don't know if you guys ever used it in the past, but it was...
Sorry, didn't catch it.
W-Y-R-E, Wire.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but...
Okay, guys, well, that's time. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the show, and see some of you at the party later.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.